Hey guys, what's going on, and welcome to the Jag Nerd channel. In today's video I'm gonna be showing you guys how to successfully complete and what to focus on in the Spires of Ascension dungeon. This is going to be from a tank perspective, but it's going to be useful for any type of specs. So sit back, relax and enjoy this video. So at start, you would want to pull the first two packs together but without the Goliath. This is absolutely important because in case you pull the Goliath, that's gonna be just way too much CC to focus on. So you want to have your tank pull these two packs back behind the pillar so you can LOS all of the casts and you can make all of the mobs pack up on the same place and you can just strike them down right there. In case of a 45 week, I would recommend you, as you can see it here as well, to bloodlust this pack since it's going to be hurting your tank quite a lot and there's quite a lot of CC and interrupts you need to focus on. But on a week when it's tyrannical, I wouldn't recommend. I would just recommend you to use some CCs and burst them down. Also, you want to focus here on the fact that you need to CC or you need to interrupt the Menders since these will heal up their allies by 10% every single second when they are casting the Forsworn Doctrine. You also need to CC or interrupt the Vanguards since these will cast a Dark Lash, which is going to be focusing on either the tank or on a random party member, and especially on a 45 week and on a hierarchy it's going to be hitting quite big. Moving on, you want to pull the Goliath and these two trash mobs in the same time. Here you want to have someone to really focus interrupt on the Goliath, since especially on a 45 week you cannot let that cast go in, since this Rebellious Fist cost is going to nearly wipe your entire group instantly, especially if you are going for keys 17 and higher. This cast, if it goes in, it's just simply going to wipe your whole team. You also want to have here someone focus on the Mender, same thing, since you definitely don't want this to heal up its allies. And just in case if somebody has some extra interrupts, then they can focus on the Dark Lash. This is going to hurt you quite a lot if you don't interrupt it, but the other two casts are just way more important. So you need to make sure that you interrupt the Rebellious Fist and you need to make sure that you interrupt the Dark Lash. Other than that, you just want to make sure to keep these mobs packed up as much as possible. As you can see here, we've been playing with the affix of Spiteful. On Spiteful, if you are a tank, you always want to make sure that you kite the mobs away just a little bit, just before they are dying, just in case if you have a melee DPS, so that if the Spiteful targets them, then they don't need to run out and get out of the fun and not do anything, because this way melee can lose a lot of DPS. But as you can see here, we are running 3 casters, so this is not really an issue. Moving on, in this pack you want to pull the whole pack behind this pillar so they are grouped up and you can burst them down in the same time. Also, you want to always have someone, as you can see it here as well how we did, CC the Mender. It's on the far right side of the pack. You want to CC this since there's quite a lot to interrupt and you don't want to also focus on the Forsworn Doctrine, and especially you don't want to have this mob heal up its allies. Same thing as before, you want to make sure that you interrupt the Goliath, especially the Rebellious Fist, and also just if anybody has some free interrupts, then they can interrupt the Dark Lash. This is going to be hurting your tank quite a lot, so I recommend someone from the group to use their cooldowns, but I would not recommend everyone, since as soon as you finish this pack, it's going to pull a Pride, and after that you are going to be fighting the boss, so you will need some CCs for all of these ones, but I still recommend for at least one DPS to use their cooldowns. When the Pride comes, I recommend to pull it with the Mender, since the Mender is not going to be hitting too big and it's not going to be healing up the Pride, so this is not a very dangerous pull. Of course, if your healer is struggling with the Pride anyways, then just pull the Pride separately, but in this case you will need to pull the Mender either with the boss, which is going to be very messy, or you need to kill it separately, in which case we are going to lose a lot of precious time from your Pride that you could have used for the boss fight. As soon as you finish with this Pride, you want to rush up and start the first boss fight. As you can see how we are doing it here. You want to make sure that your team is topped off, of course, but yeah, here we are losing a bit of time because the other guys did not focus on the Mender, but it's just a couple of seconds and then we are pulling the boss. As a tank, I would recommend to pull the boss close to the little mob beside it, this little flying thing, so you can cleave it down, but you always want to make sure to face it away from the group. Or if you are a group member, healer or DPS, if you see that the boss is facing towards you, then you definitely want to get behind it, because it is going to cast a frontal, which is a huge strike. And especially if you are a tank, then you want to make sure that you time all of your defensives for this cast, because especially on a tyrannical week, this is a fortified week, it's not that bad, but on a tyrannical week this is nearly a one shot. And especially if you are going for higher keys, then if you don't have any defensives up, it can actually be just a one shot and you die instantly. So you definitely want to time your defensives for this, but luckily it only casts it twice or 3 times, and then it flies up, and then you have nearly around half a minute to get your cooldowns back. So it's pretty good, you can time it pretty well. And this is all that you need to focus on. The bird is going to be moving all the time, so you always want to pull the boss after it, but you always want to make sure that you do not pull the boss after it when it's on high energy. You can see the boss's energy, and when it reaches 100, it's going to be casting the frontal. And if you pull it while this happens, then you might just one-shot your whole team, which is definitely not something that you want. The last thing that you want to focus on, but this is very simple, if the boss is flying up and is targeting you, just as you see it here on the screen how it pops up, then you definitely don't want to stand close to the bird, since then you are going to have the boss throw the spear right there, and then the melee won't be able to pretty much do anything around the bird, since it's going to be damaging them. Moving on, you want to go to the right side. I think this is an absolutely great route, by the way, so feel free to follow this. It's going to be good on a fortified and especially on a tyrannical week. So you want to pull both of these specs, but as a tank, you need to make sure that you pull them the way that you just simply don't die, because these tend to stun you just when you pull them, and they can absolutely just smash tanks. This bleed is just absolutely brutal, especially if you are pulling both of these packs. It is very challenging, so you want to have your team help you kite this, and you want to kite it all the time. This is not a pack that you can really face tank. If you have your big cooldowns, you might be able to last for a short period, but it's definitely not ideal, so you just want to always kite around these mobs. Moving on to the next pack, you want to pull only these 3 archers or throwers or whatever you want to call them. You want to pull them down here and have people stand behind this pillar. Everybody has to stand there, since they are randomly targeting people, so it's not enough just for you to stand there. Everybody has to stand there, otherwise they won't come down. And you want to face them just like this, so in case they jump back, they won't jump far, and you can just nuke them down in the same time. I always recommend to pull this down here, since fighting them upstairs is going to be very challenging. They are jumping all around the place, and they might even pull the other pack, which is going to just ruin your whole pride timing. Moving on, you are going to be pulling a quite hard pack, since this has a squad leader and it also has a mender, plus it has a javeliner. I think it's called that, I'm not sure what is the name. No, it's the skirmisher, sorry for that. So the skirmisher is going to be randomly throwing stuff around, and it's going to be jumping away. So I recommend to you to always CC this, since you can't really burst it down with the other ones, since you can't really keep it with the pack. It's very challenging. So I'm even writing it here, but the mate just doesn't listen. They don't CC, and it just stands out there and randomly tries to kill people. It's definitely not ideal, not optimal. So you always want to have this CC. You can just wait a couple of seconds, it's going to jump out, and you can freely CC it without any AoE spells reaching it. Moving on, you want to focusing on the squad leader, since this is going to reduce the damage that all of the other mobs are getting. So you need to burst this down, and you also always need to make sure that you interrupt the champion. The champion and the mender are the exact same mobs. They both are going to cast the 4th form doctrine, which is going to be healing 10% of one of their allies every single second. So you always need to interrupt this, especially if you are fighting a squad leader, because you definitely don't want a squad leader to be healed up by like 50%. That can even cause you a wipe in the same time. So following this, you are going to be having a pride, which is a pretty tough fight, because usually this skirmisher is still up, preferably CC'd, which did not happen now, and then you can pull it with the pride, and keep it there in the same time, because from this spot he cannot jump back anymore, so you just need to make sure that it's facing towards this edge, and then you can just fight the Pride, and there's nothing other usual here. Following this, you can either do the jump, which I have never tried, but apparently you can jump through here and then you can have it even faster than flying through, but that's just a couple of seconds and it won't matter for normal human people like us and not pros. So you are pulling after this pack with all of the birds. Here you want to make sure that you have all of the CCs, all of the mass stuns, because especially on a fortified week, this is just going to shred down the tank. So you want to have some defensives and you want everybody to focus CC and interrupt these. The best thing is which happens here if you have a druid, since this can AoE silence them for like 5 seconds, which is absolutely great. Moving on, the next pack is going to have a squad leader again, which you want to focus out. And this is a very massive pack, since this will have a skirmisher too, which again you want to CC, which again did not happen here. And you also have a vanguard, which is going to be casting Dark Lash, which you want to always interrupt as much as possible, since this will hurt. And you will also have a lion as well, which will be stacking up a nasty bleed onto the tank. So this is definitely a challenging pack for the tanks, since you need to kite them around to keep them together to make sure that you don't die, but in the same time there are casters, there's one jumping away. So please guys, help your tank out here. Make sure to interrupt those casts and make sure to help the tank to pull this pack together, since this is definitely a very challenging pack for a tank. So after you killed the squad leader here, it's not that much more left. It's going to be much easier to kill the rest of the mobs. Especially on a bolstering week, this dungeon is going to be very hard, since the mobs tend to have very different health pools. So I don't really recommend doing this dungeon on a bolstering week. But anyways, here we burst them down and then we are moving forward. The next pack is going to be having, again, I think 4 lions. And here again you want to make sure that you don't get stunned, because on a fortified week these can just shred you down in a couple of seconds. So you either want to walk forward with a CD, a defensive CD, or if you're a paladin, it's perfect to walk forward with a bubble. You are going to be losing aggro, but at least you are not getting stunned in the beginning, and you can start kiting them away. If you are having a hunter, you can use a flare, or if you are having a DK, you can use the DK to pull them in, and then you can just take aggro. But you always want to make sure that you are kiting these around. I'm not kiting very well since they are not pegged up, but you want to make sure to kite them around, but in the same time have them pegged up so your DPS can cleave them down and kill them as fast as possible. Following this pack, if you have a Kyrian in the group, you definitely want them to pick up this spear. This spear is just smashing. Before the second boss there is a big pack that's going to be hurting you. Doesn't matter if it's a fortified or a tyrannical weak, this spear can stun them down for like 5 seconds and increase all damage taken by 20%. It's just so OP, I cannot tell you guys how much this matters. So you always want to have a Kyrian here, and you always want to make sure that they pick up this spear, since this will make your life so much easier, make your run so much faster, will save so much cooldowns on that pack, so you definitely want this. Moving on to this pack, as you saw, you are pulling in this, sorry I cannot see the name, but this dark mob, sorry for that, and all of the lions are coming with it. So you want to make sure that you are kiting the lions around, but unfortunately the other mob is just going to be jumping out and casting a random damaging cast on your group. I have to be honest with you guys, I haven't figured out yet how to deal with this group perfectly. I would say that you want to have all of the stuns on the caster, because you definitely need to kite around the lions. So you either use some big cooldowns so that people can burst down the lions, or you kite the lions around and you have people stun and CC the caster. Following this, you are going to be having a Pride, which is absolutely great since the next 2 packs are going to be quite challenging. And if you have a smasher group with some good DPS, then you can even pull them together, though I do not recommend pulling the squad leader with the Goliath, since in that case you will need to have a lot of interrupts and it's going to be a very messy pack. But as you will see, you can pull them in the same time with the birds. So following this pride. And anyways, just with the pride, I wanted to mention to you guys that if you are a paladin or if you can do any healing, you always want to make sure that in this phase, especially if your healer is struggling, you rather heal than to focus on DPS and using your shield. So here you can see that I'm only pulling in this one pack, so we are not going really crazy here, it's just a very simple pack. Here you want to again make sure that you are interrupting all of the bursts, since these are going to be shredding down your tank. I think here our druid is going to be sorting this situation out. Yes, there it goes. You want to always make sure not to pull the mobs out from this interrupt, and also you want to make sure, of course, as usual, that you need to interrupt the Goliath, since that rebellious cast just cannot go in. And I cannot tell you guys how many groups I've seen disbanded because people forgot to interrupt this and then start talking all sorts of stuff on each other, which I don't really want to go into, and then people are just leaving because one interrupt has been missed. This is a very important interrupt. On the next pack, as you can see, there's a squad leader again, our good friend, we all hate it. You want to also make sure that with the squad leader, you make sure that you don't get hit by the frontal, and you always turn the squad leader away from your group. I forgot to mention this before, but it does a very nasty frontal, so you never want to have this turn towards your group. You also want to make sure to interrupt the Dark Lash as much as possible here, but what is the most important is that there is a Mender or a champion here which is going to be healing, and you definitely don't want the squad leader to be healed, so you always need to have someone to focus on interrupting the Mender or the champion. As soon as you've been bursting down, the squad leader is going to be a walk in the park. You can just smash down the other mobs and then you can move forward. And the next pack is going to be giving you a perfect pride for the second boss, which is absolutely great, since this boss is a very challenging one. Doesn't matter if it's fortified or a tyrannical weak. If it's a tyrannical weak, the difference is that if you fail on it with your pride and Baal, then you can pretty much just leave the group. I mean, if you are with some absolutely amazing people who can dodge anything and everything, then they might do it. But on a tyrannical weak, on a high key, if you can make this boss without a BL, Bloodlust, and a pride buff, then I mean you are one of those great players because that's a very challenging one. And as you can see here, this is the spot where we are using the spear. We are pulling all of the mobs in. There is a mass stun. There is a 20% damage increase. Some people are popping some CDs, since especially on a fortified week, this is going to be shredding me down even with cooldowns. This is an absolutely smashing pack. There's a bird that needs to be interrupted, a Mender that needs to be interrupted, there is a squad leader that needs to be turned away from your group because it's going to be do a frontal and kill pretty much everybody, and then there is this dark mob, which I still can't read the name because I'm watching the video so I can do the commentary in a lower resolution. I'm sorry for that, guys, but it's going to be jumping out and going to be randomly casting on your group. So your healer is definitely struggling here, but in the same time your tank is going to struggle too, especially if you don't have a Kyrian. You cannot have this 5-second stun plus the damage boost. Then you either need to use all of your cooldowns here, or you need to have some kind of crazy tank that can handle all of this with just a couple of CDs. And also you need to keep in mind that your healer should be in a good shape at the end of this fight, since the pride is going to spawn, and you guys need to burst this pride down without using much of your cooldown, since that will be needed for the boss. But in the same time, you need to smash it down fast because your healer will possibly be out of their CDs, since the pack before is just so challenging. So following this, you can see that the pride is coming. So just again, with this pack, there's so many things to consider. You want to use some CDs, but you also want to make sure that somebody still has a CD for the price, so you can smash it down and your healer won't fail here, because you definitely don't want to die here, since the run back is going to be so long that it's just going to be a fail and out of time for sure. Also, you want to make sure that you have some CDs left for the boss, since this boss has to die as fast as possible, since it will get progressively harder the longer it lives. So just another thing, you always want to use a Bloodlust for this boss with the pride buff and then kill it as fast as possible. So killing the pride here, we are moving on to the boss, and there's something important I want to mention here for tanks. So you want to make sure to always put the paddles as close as possible to each other, because this way it's going to be much easier to manage to dodge them. If you put them on other sides of the room, it's going to be extremely hard for the DPS and heal to dodge this. So you want to make sure that you always put the paddles close to each other, or at least the first two ones. The boss is going to be spawning these under himself, so as you see, it did put a paddle there, and I'm pulling it just beside it. I'm dodging the paddles, and then with the next Dark Star Stride cast, it's going to put it just beside it, so when it's casting the recharge for the DPS and the heal, it's going to be much more easy to dodge these incoming frontal attacks. I'm filling up here. I'm usually really good at this, but I think I'm failing like twice in this run. But my DPS is just absolutely amazing, and they are bursting down this boss in a couple of seconds. I can tell you that this was an absolutely great run, and some good people that I've been playing with, and there I'm failing again. But anyways, I just wanted to mention that in case the boss is not dying so fast, then towards the end of the recharge, you want to make sure that you walk back towards the paddles so that the boss comes on you, since it's going to cast another Dark Stride very fast after it finishes the recharge, and you don't want this to be on the other side of the room, since in that case the frontal little cones are going to be coming from all around the place, and it's going to be extremely challenging to dodge these. Coming through, you want to pick up the spear, or have anyone Kyrian to pick up the spear, and then you want to skip the Helion. You can skip it if you walk very close to the wall here, but you have to be very close. I can't tell you how many people are pulling this still, because you really need to be very careful here and stay very close to the wall. At the top of the stairs, you want to pull this back, since you have your Kyrian spear for this, so you can stun them. There's the extra buff. It's not even a big group, so you can just burst them down. You want to make sure, in case they don't die extremely fast, that you interrupt the Goliath. And there's also a Warden, which is going to be the same again as the champion and the Mender. I'm not sure what Blizzard was playing here. I think they've been trying to mess around with people with giving different names for the same mobs, because they do pretty much the same thing. It's still costing heal, which needs to be interrupted. So these are the two things that needs to be focused on here. So just burst this pack down, and then there's just another small pack and the last three before the last boss to finish this dungeon. Next up here, you want to make sure that you have your whole team mount up, and I like to start here a pull timer. I've been running a pack here, so that's why I've been doing it. If you are on Discord, of course, you can just talk and say when you are starting, but you want to make sure that the group goes in the same time, because otherwise some people might get one shot. So you want to make sure that you start just half a second before the timer, so most of the mobs are going to be coming onto you, but they are randomly throwing spears around, so some people are going to be in trouble here. But to be honest, these are not even elite mobs, and they can be killed. Even if just like 2 people survives this from your group, if some people fail, even then you can easily smash this down, and then resurrect the people who have died. So following this, you only need to kill the boss, and on top the 3 big guys before the last boss, and you already have your trash count. This is a very fast route. It's a route that will give you pride for all of the bosses, only this one not, but this is one of the easiest bosses. It's all about the tactics, so you cannot really mess this up if you just concentrate a little bit. So here the tank needs to portion out their cooldowns very well. You need to keep in mind that it's going to recharge, where you will have some time to reset your cooldowns. So feel free to use your cooldown, since this is a very intensive fight, especially in a Tyrannical. For a healer, it's a very hard fight. When it's casting this, when you are putting the paddles down on the floor, I'm sorry, I'm not sure what the spell name is. As you saw, I always mark up one person who the whole group is going to be running up onto. Now, unfortunately, the healer was not the best here, and he was standing very close to the boss, but the main thing here would be that you never want to put these under the boss, because here in this first phase, you can pull the boss out. Even if it's under the boss, you will be able to pull it out from it, but in the last phase, it's costing it 3 times, and the last one, following the last one, it's going to be going into recharge straight away, and all of these orbs are going to be exploding on it, and it's going to wipe you. So you want to make sure to always pull this out. You never want to put this under the boss. You want to mark up someone outside, a ranged person who you can run out to, everybody runs to them, and you put down the paddles on the same place. You also need to make sure that you don't have any melee close to you, since this boss is going to be casting a spell on you that's going to be killing anybody in 8-yard radius. When this phase happens, if you're a paladin, you can just soak all of the bubbles all by yourself and you don't even get any damage. I'm just getting a couple less ones here because I've been a bit slow, I did not have my steed. But anyways, this can be managed by the tank or by anybody with an immunity, but preferably it should be the tank, since you don't want to lose too much damage here. Just again, as I mentioned, you want to make sure that you don't have anybody close to the tank, very close. You don't want to have anybody standing in front of the boss beside the tank, since this is going to be casting a spell, a stomp, that's going to be having a huge damage on anybody who's standing close to the tank. It just happened there a couple of seconds ago. If you just go back a little bit, you can see that it gave me a huge damage, which is going to be one-shotting pretty much anybody else other than the tank. So you cannot stand in front of the boss beside the tank. Also with this cast that you see right now, is going to be casting it on someone. You can see a big circle around them, and they need to stand out from the group because this will apply a dot which is hurting a lot. And if the healer needs to heal more than one person with this, especially on a tyrannical week, I don't think that they can do it. As you see, we killed it here before the third paddle, so you cannot see why you actually need to pull it out always, but just trust me guys, you never want to put the paddles under the boss. It is just going to cause you a wipe for sure. After this, you fly up and you are fighting the last 3 trash mobs. I like to start with the left one, since all of them are going to be applying a different kind of debuff that you need to deal with. Actually, this first one is not applying any debuffs. It's putting down a spear that's going to be casting a kind of a frontal into 4 different directions, and you want to make sure that you are not getting hit by this, since it will hurt a lot. This is all about the positioning, but usually you should trust your tank, because the tank should definitely know where to stand not to get hit by any of these. So if you have a good tank, then it's a good strategy to just simply stand on the tank, and the tank will always stand in a spot where you are not getting hit by the frontal of these little spears. And this mob does not cast any other frontals, so you can definitely just stand beside the tank. So I really recommend this. Of course, only if you have a good tank, because as you can see here, even I was getting hit by one of them. So yeah, well, that's something on me. So moving on to the next one, and I want to mention that all of these abilities, in terms of the order that you are killing them, the next one is going to get the same. So as you can see, now this mob is casting the spear as well. Also it applies debuff on us, and it also has a frontal. So this is already a much harder one. You still need to focus on dodging the spears, but you need to make sure that the mob does not face towards your group, because it's casting a disumendo or something like that frontal, which is going to be hurting a lot. So you need to turn this away while dodging the spears, and you need to kill it as fast as possible, because it's applying a debuff that's going to give you more and more damage during the fight. So you want to kill this as fast as possible, but you still want to save some cooldowns, since the last one is going to be the most challenging. And I'm telling this to you already guys, that the last one on a fortified week needs to be done with Bloodlust. Trust me guys, the last boss is extremely simple. It's all about focus, it's all about strategy. You cannot really mess it up if you know what you are doing, but this last one is very, very challenging, and you don't really want to wipe on this. You are going to be losing a lot of time with the flying up, with the running back. It's just a very, very bad wipe. But the last boss is easy, so you always want to Bloodlust this, and you see this on this mob. Since this is doing the spear, it's doing another AoE that's going to be just spreading out damage onto all of the people. It's doing the frontal and is applying a debuff that's going to be dealing more and more damage to every single party member. And if you don't kill this fast, it's just going to be doing so much AoE damage that like no healer can really deal with. So you definitely want to use a Bloodlust on it, just like we did it here, and then you can smash it down. And after this, you have your 100% trash count, and you only need to kill the last boss plus the pride. And especially on a 45 week, as I said, you are going to be using the Bloodlust on this last trash mob, but that's absolutely fine, because the pride is going to be enough for the last boss. Anyways, here I've been losing aggro, which was actually a bug, and I'm not sure why is this happening, but even if I have final stand, when my bubble is supposed to be taunting every single mob, every single time, I mean every single second, for some reason it sometimes just simply bugs, and then I lose aggro and mobs tend to run down. Actually, now thinking that mob might have been more far away than 8 yards from me, and maybe that was the issue. I actually never thought about this, guys. See, even I'm learning all this stuff while doing these videos. So anyways, here comes the last sprite. You want to make sure to kill this as fast as possible, but without cooldowns. So in this case, I would recommend to you guys to use your defensive cooldowns to help out your healer, because they are going to be out of their cooldowns too. This is quite a challenging pride, since people are trying to save their cooldowns for the last boss. The healer might be out since the trash before it is very challenging. So you definitely want to help your healer out here by using your defensive cooldowns, maybe an anti-magic zone or whatever you have darkness with the demon hunter. And also if you are a paladin, or if you can do some off healing, then it's always good to help out your healer a little bit. And moving on to the last boss, it's a very simple one. You only want to make sure that your tank always pulls the boss under the little bubble that's going to be defending you from the AoE that the boss casts. Unfortunately, I missed this with the first one. I've been sleeping a bit, talking with my girlfriend, I guess, or something, slacking a little bit, but anyways, we are still making it. As you see here, we need to run in, and I'm even using my steed, which is definitely not ideal, so you always want your tank to be pulling the boss inside as fast as possible. So here you see it spawns and I'm instantly pulling it towards it. But in the same time, you want to always dodge this frontal when the boss is running out, and if you have the debuff on you, then you don't want to run under this bubble until the healer either dispels it from you, or if there's no more time left, then you want to make sure to put it just on the side of the bubble, not in the middle. And as soon as the boss jumps in the middle, if you are a tank or a healer, I recommend to you to instantly run to the top of the room where the orbs are going to spawn, so you can bring in one as fast as possible. If you are a DPS dealer, then you can keep on DPSing a boss a little bit more, but in general you want to bring these in as fast as possible, since it's going to be this phase is going to be stacking up a debuff on you that's going to be damaging you more and more. And as you can see, or as you could have seen there, you will see it one more time, sorry I can't talk so fast, but as soon as you brought in all of the little bubbles into the spear in the middle, you can pick up the spear and you need to throw down the boss. Here this is very crucial. You want to have someone who knows how to do this, because the boss is going to be moving around, and if you miss it, then you need to gather these bubbles one more time and do the whole thing one more time. And in this case, you are going to be having so much stacks on you that if you are running a high key, you won't survive it. Your healer won't be able to heal that. That's just way too much AoE damage. So check it one more time how I'm doing it here. I'm running up, I'm grabbing a bubble as fast as possible, and I'm bringing it back, and as soon as all are in, you can pick up the spear. And what you want to do here is that you either, if you are Discord, you want to have someone always look at the boss to see when it moves, because it's going to move every like 5 to 10 seconds or something like that. Here I'm checking if the boss moves, and I didn't really see, so I did wait a little bit. But you definitely want to make sure that if you don't know when the boss moves, then rather wait a bit, because maybe you're gonna lose a couple of seconds and it's gonna put a bit more stress on your healer. But if you miss it, then it's just a wipe, so that's not good. So preferably you want to keep an eye out and see when the boss moves, then pick up the spear and then throw it down. So this is the whole boss fight. Just stay under the bubble to avoid the AoE, pick up the orbs as fast as possible, and avoid the frontal. And that's it, your key is done, and you finished your Keystone Master. So anyways guys, thank you very much for watching this video. I really enjoyed doing this, and I hope that you will succeed in this dungeon with these little tips. And as always, please like and subscribe to this channel so I can keep on making more and more guides like this. And as always, I will see you guys in the next one.